Certainly the mood here in this town is better than the last two auto shows I was here for, 2009, 2010. Well, I've been to funerals that had a better mood than those two auto shows. And the sense of optimism and confidence that exists here in this town is, today is really remarkable. And it's, if you think about it, here at the Detroit Motor Show and Automotive World Congress, we're really celebrating the revival of the American automobile industry. And I know this town has, in the past decades, had certain products that saved it from its day of reckoning and bought it more time. But that's really all it was. We all knew that the clock was still ticking towards a day of reckoning, and that day of reckoning finally indeed did come. I have never been more optimistic about the future of the American automobile industry than I am today. And certainly at this auto show is a thrill to welcome Chrysler to the party. If you look at their display, 16 products with dramatically improved quality, performance, and design. I would say from my time in this industry, I've never seen such a dramatic impact on a product policy in such a short amount of time as what occurred at Chrysler Corporation. I'll never forget the first time I met Sergio. Sergio's now at single name status. Sergio, everybody knows who we're talking about. It was in the summer of '09, shortly after he took over for Fiat. I wanted to see him to determine two things. Did he have any idea whatsoever how screwed up Chrysler Corporation was, and how hopeless this task was that he'd just taken on, because if he didn't, he was going to be roadkill quick. And then secondly, even if he understood what an impossible challenge it was, whether he would be able to do anything about it. And it was one of those unforgettable mornings. I was, his office, as everybody knows, is over in the Development Center. And I was there early, and there weren't many people there. And here he comes in his black sweater with a black knapsack over his back. And we go into his office. He tells his assistant to bring in espressos and not to be interrupted. And he then, here he is, a finance guy, a deal guy, proceeded over the next 2 to 3 hours to individually critique every single Chrysler Motors product from front to back, from drivetrain, transmissions, axles, noise, vibration, interior quality, etc., etc. And after he finished that rather depressing tale, we looked at each other and he said, you know, if you didn't do something, Chrysler was going to go out of business. And we all know, as far as capital allocation, one of the most inefficient things you can do is intervene dramatically on an existing production run rather than waiting for facelifts or model year changeover. It's extremely expensive and complex to do. But here, already 30 days into his responsibility, he understood instinctually that it was the only way out. I think it was one of the great, courageous turnaround decisions I've ever seen in this industry. And he did his homework for the next year and 18 months, and here at the Detroit Motor Show is a clear statement from Chrysler Corporation that they're here to stay. And it's great to see this revival of the American automobile industry, because it's still important for America to make things. I know, Keith and Peter, you had a panel about this yesterday, which was absolutely the right topic to talk about. And it is really the future of America that is at stake here. And if the American automobile industry had been swept away, it would have been a tragedy and a travesty. So I think, considering that we're here celebrating the revival, we have to reflect somewhat on the pain and suffering that went in to get to this point and resolve ourselves to never be there again. So since it is of such historic proportions, I thought I'd take my time today to talk a little bit about what was, what is, and what we have to make sure we never do again. So let's talk about production push. Production push, here's my way of describing it, was a vampire sucking the blood and the life out of the American automobile industry. And production push, quite simply, is you have extremely high fixed cost and you make every cost you can think of fixed. Forget about variable costs, just make everything fixed, whether it's development cost, installed capacity to produce, labor, legacy benefits, pensions, it just all stacks up, and then you have an obsession with unit cost in production, which squeezes all the flexibility out of the production system, and then you run the plants like crazy trying to cover your fixed cost. You push that production out into the marketplace without any specific customer in mind, and even though dealers and retailers already have vehicles up to here, and then the only way to make them go away is continuous liquidation sales through massive incentives, which absolutely undercut residual values, and most importantly, you betray the customers who have already purchased from you previously. You betray that loyalty, and they say, hey, I had a brand investment in you, you betrayed me, I'm going somewhere else. You lose share, it becomes harder to cover your fixed costs. Maybe you downsize, but then you repeat the whole thing over and over again. And it was absolute insanity what was going on in this town for decades. It was slow motion suicide, and the day of reckoning was about as ugly as it could get. Now we have to step back and think about this. What finally ended the insanity and provided for the salvation of the American automobile industry? Now, as a capitalist, entrepreneurial Republican, it pains me greatly to say this, but the U.S. government, Uncle Sam and the Auto Task Force, saved the American automobile industry, probably saved the U.S. economy, and it was the only one big enough to step into the chasm. And not only did they step into the chasm, but I give the Auto Task Force, I know you had my friend Ron Bloom here last night, who did a fantastic job of really finally completely killing all the sacred cows that supported production push. Was it pretty? No, it was about as ugly and as painful as it could get. No one was spared. Everyone was treated unfairly, but it had to be done, and they did it in a very expeditious manner and have given us this new chance. Now, there are a couple heroes, in my view, in this town, that if they hadn't been there, it may, even with the Auto Task Force, might not have played out the way it did. Certainly, Bob Lutz, who straightened out the development process for cars and trucks at General Motors and guided the talent that was already there, like Tom Stevens and Ed Wilburn, that really unlocked their creativity and their genius to get a good product pipeline for General Motors, said there's something worth saving here. If that hadn't been done, then you could have come to the conclusion, why bother? And also, in my opinion, this town ought to pass the hat and take up a collection to build a statue to Alan Mulally. Now, you may ask why. Well, Alan's now been here for 4 years, and Alan very early on said, production push is insane. If we continue to do it, we will go bankrupt and out of business. I'm going to recreate this with a focus on the marketplace, and I'm going to make decision after decision for the long term rather than the short term. So when the industry was twisting in the wind, whether to be saved or not saved, there was a shining company to look at and say, this is what can be. And that was Ford Motor Company and Alan Mulally at the head of that Ford Motor Company. But at the end of the day, when we look in the mirror, we have to be honest and say, that stake in the heart was hammered home by the U.S. government, Uncle Sam, and the Auto Task Force. Now, while they killed just about every sacred cow, I have to observe that there are still marketing tools from production push that are still out there, old school activities that really have no place in our business today, and we really should all work together to eradicate them and to put them behind us. I give you here just one example, and that's stair-step programs or retro incentive programs. The way they work is quite simple. Manufacturer goes to its dealer network and says,